for joining me on the Listen Up Girl podcast. This is your daily LGBTQ news podcast. Yesterday, the Supreme Court just handed down a major ruling on transgender athletes. A new HRC report shows queer consumers are putting their money where their values are. 2 openly gay candidates are making historic moves towards Congress. A federal court hears arguments today on 2 trans military bans. The Dutch Prime Minister is headed for a wedding, and the Heartstopper trailer finally drops. Lots to get into today, so let's get started with the big one. The Supreme Court ruled in a 6-3 decision that states can legally bar transgender girls and women from girls and women's school sports teams. The case combined challenges out of West Virginia and Idaho. Justice Brett Kavanaugh wrote the majority opinion, concluding that Title IX, the federal law banning sex discrimination education, actually permits states to separate teens by biological sex rather than gender identity. In his words, the Constitution and Title IX do not require an overhaul of women and girls' sports throughout America. The ruling directly affects Idaho and West Virginia, but it will almost certainly extend to 25 other states with similar bans already on the books, meaning more than half of the country now has the Supreme Court's blessing to exclude trans athletes. Becky Pepper Jackson, the West Virginia teenager at the center of these cases, a state champion in girls shot put who's never gone through male puberty, will no longer be allowed to compete on her own team. It wasn't a clean sweep, though. The liberal justices agreed the bans don't violate Title IX, but split to dissent specifically on the constitutional question, with Justice Sotomayor writing that a majority inflicts on a hardship on those it disfavors without giving them the fair and full opportunity the Constitution requires to liberate their contentions. And legal analysts are already noting that the ruling narrower than it looks. It states that states may include trans athletes, not that they must, but leaving room for inclusive states and schools to keep their existing policies. The fight isn't over, but today is a huge loss. Next, HRC report, queer consumers earn their money. So this is something a little more hopeful. New numbers from HRC's Foundation's Pride in the Marketplace 2026 report, 71.5% of LGBTQ plus consumers saying they are buying less from companies seen as pulling back on inclusion, and nearly 70% say they've increased spending on brands as standing firm. The real leverage, LGBTQ plus consumers, $1.1 trillion in spending power. Target, Amazon, Walmart, Home Depot, and Chick-fil-A top the list of brands people are seen as retreating from. Costco, Apple, Ben & Jerry's, Delta, and Kroger top the list of brands as showing up. HRC President Kelly Robinson called it an opportunity, not just a warning, and data backs that up. Next, Shevrin Jones launches Florida congressional bid. In Florida, State Senator Shevrin Jones officially launched his campaign for the open 24th congressional district seat after Congresswoman Frederica Wilson's retirement. If he wins, Jones becomes Florida's first openly gay member of Congress ever. He already made history in 2020 as the first openly gay person elected to the Florida State Senate, and he kicked off his campaign at the very church his parents founded, framing it around affordability, groceries, gas, rent, healthcare. The district leans heavily Democrat, so the August primary is effectively the real race. Next, Scott Wiener advances to replace Pelosi. Out in San Francisco, State Senator Scott Wiener advanced to a November runoff to succeed retiring House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, beating out Supervisor Connie Chan in a crowded primary field. In his victory speech, Wiener didn't hold back. We need to go to the mat for trans people. We're not going to let them eliminate trans people. Given today's Supreme Court ruling, that carries even more weight than it did a week ago. Next, trans military ban class action is actually happening today. So today, a federal hearing on what to certify the lawsuit challenging the Trump administration's Also happening today, a federal hearing on whether to certify the lawsuit challenging the Orange Convicted Felons Administration's transgender military ban as a class action, meaning a future ruling could cover every transgender service member affected, not just the named plaintiffs. This follows a June 1st appeals court ruling finding the ban likely unconstitutional, calling it driven by the bare desire to harm a politically unpopular group. That ruling currently protects existing trans troops from discharge. Through Defense Secretary Hegseth has already said the administration is taking this to the Supreme Court. And then something a little lighter from overseas. Rob Jetten, the Netherlands' youngest prime minister ever, and its first openly gay head of government, is reportedly headed toward marrying his long-term fiancée, Argentine field hockey player Nicholas Kenyon, later this year. A small, quiet kind of milestone, definitely a welcome one today. And finally, the trailer for Heartstopper Forever dropped this month, wrapping up with Nick and Charlie's story for a good as Nick heads to university and the two face their first stretch of long distance. Creator Alice Osman wrote the screenplay herself, calling it an exploration of what makes love survive. It premieres July 17th on Netflix, with the sixth and final graphic novel landing July 2nd. A sweet earned goodbye. So that's today's show, a real setback with the Supreme Court, but also the leverage in our wallets. Two history-making candidates on the move, a hearing that could protect thousands of service members, a wedding to look forward to, and a goodbye to Nick and Charlie. If this show means something to you, subscribe, leave a rating and review, share this episode, and follow me on social at TheRealZachRE. It genuinely helps more people find the show. I'll be back tomorrow with more LGBTQ plus news. Thanks for listening.